The oldest church in Bernards Township is the Basking Ridge Presbyterian Church, 1 East Oak Street, Basking Ridge. Shortly after the first Scotch-Irish farmers settled in Basking Ridge, about 1717, they erected a log house of worship on the site of the present church. In 1731, John Ayres deeded to the trustees of this church 1.5 acres, quote, on or near the middle of which now stands a house built and intended for the exercising of religious worship in, end quote. To accommodate a growing congregation, the original log cabin meeting house was replaced with a clapboard frame building near the same site as the log cabin in 1749. The building was 55 feet long and 35 feet wide, with the length running east and west and the pulpit on the north. There were 52 pews on the floor and 26 pews in the gallery. When this became too crowded, the building was sold and removed, and in 1839, a new church in classic Greek Revival architecture was constructed of brick. This structure was enlarged in 1869 and altered in 1908. In 1960, the pulpit and choir areas were changed to the present arrangement. The sanctuary, churchyard, and oak tree are listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The education building and memorial chapel, adjacent to the church, were erected in 1955. Across the street is the church house, built in 1967, containing a library, parlor, youth center, classrooms, and offices. This space and the educational wing are in frequent use during the week by the congregation and community. The churchyard has been a community burying ground since the early 18th century, with the oldest stone dating to 1736. Dominating the yard was a great white oak, which was approximately 616 years old. Under this tree, George Whitefield, the celebrated evangelist, preached in 1740 to some 3,000 people. George Washington and his troops are said to have rested under the old oak in the cemetery on several occasions. The Willets Church House. Across the street from the sanctuary and education buildings, the church's office, library, parlor, youth center, and other meeting rooms are located in the Willets Church House. This building was donated by Harris and Gladys Willets in 1968, and the foundation they established continues to generously support its upkeep and maintenance. In 2018, they celebrated the 50th anniversary of this building and rededication it to many more years, to the glory of God and for the service of His children. The Basking Ridge Presbyterian Church also is the home of the Treehouse Daycare Center. Liberty Corner Presbyterian Church, located at 45 Church Street, Liberty Corner. It was established in 1837, approximately 123 years after the Basking Ridge Presbyterian Church. Their beliefs. They celebrate God's love for every person, a love that calls them to share His blessings and love with each other. They strive to deepen their relationship with Jesus Christ so that they can reach out to their community in His name. The faith community of Liberty Corner Church joins Christians around the world and across the ages to declare the core of their faith. Their mission? To make disciples of Jesus Christ who makes disciples. The church is called to be light and salt, bringing the love, healing, and justice of Jesus Christ to a hurting world. They bear witness to the truth of Jesus Christ as God's Son in word and action, with the hope that all will come to know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. They are called and gifted by the Holy Spirit to work for justice in this world and to love their neighbor with the mercy of Christ. Their vision? They transform the Somerset Hills with the love of God and Jesus Christ by being active ministers of Jesus Christ. They will help every person to discover their gifts and passion for ministry, equip them to effectively exercise those gifts, coach them to help others to discover their gifts, and, in doing so, transform the lives of individuals and our community as a whole. They envision a Christ-centered community where all generations live together. They believe in gather together as a family of believers to worship God, grow in their relationships with God and with each other, and go out to serve and share the love of Jesus with their neighbors near and far. The Liberty Corner Presbyterian Church is also the home of the Children's Corner Daycare Center. St. Mark's Episcopal Church, established in 1850 at 140 South Finley Avenue in Basking Ridge. Looking at who they are and what practices make up their identity, they realize that they major in food. Their outreach ministries are largely composed of feeding ministries, bringing nourishment to the hungry through soup kitchens and the food bank. Their fellowship opportunities are often centered around great food and drink, made by loving hands and shared with warm hearts. When someone in their congregation is sick or going through a difficult time, the other parishioners often show support for them with a gift of dinner. Their worship is centered week by week on the sacred meal of Holy Communion. They see this identity as a gift from God, and they see this as their calling from God to nourish the hungry and to create a space for them and others to be nourished by God's Spirit. Millington Baptist Church is located at 520 King George Road in Basking Ridge. The church was founded in 1851, and a year later, the current church building was erected. Millington Baptist Church is gospel-centered. They believe the gospel is the core of everything. God has given everything for us, so they are called to give everything for Him. Therefore, they respond to His great love by extending grace to everyone and giving Him first place in their lives. They are biblically grounded and culturally relevant. They engage the culture and remain doctrinally pure. This is their calling, to contextualize the timeless message of the gospel for our generation. Passion for the mission of God locally and globally. They desire to reach our world and love our neighbor. They also believe the church should reflect the diversity of its community, ethnically and demographically. Intentional spiritual formation. They pursue deliberate discipleship while being dependent upon God for true spiritual formation. Growth is slow and non-linear, where the Spirit of God shapes us into the image of Jesus. Authentic community. They strive to be merciful and accepting. They also don't shy away from hard conversations that may hold each other accountable. They believe it's okay not to be okay. It's just not okay to stay there. Servant leaders. They believe a fully engaged follower of Christ is a servant leader. Every member is a minister. Every Christian has been given spiritual gifts to be discovered, developed, and deployed. Strong families. They want to build strong families and be a place of restoration, care, and support for those without a family. In a world where we have seen the breakdown of the family impact our society in negative ways, they believe in the importance of resourcing and building strong families with intentional support for both healthy marriages and godly parenting. The Basking Ridge United Methodist Episcopalian Church, otherwise known as Bishop Jane's United Methodist Church. The first church was named the Basking Ridge Methodist Episcopal Church in 1853. In 1900, a second church was erected and named Bishop Jane's Methodist Episcopal Church. It is located at 22 South Findlay Avenue, originally called Front Street, in Basking Ridge. In 1853, regular Methodist preaching was established in Basking Ridge, an adjoining town, by the bishop buying a house and devoting it to that purpose. The next year, the present church was built, largely through his contributions and personal help. Quote, "We had only 4 male members at the Ridge, not one of them of means, when it was proposed to build the church." End quote. The contract for building required that the stones for foundation and basement should be placed gratuitously on the site by friends of the enterprise. The pastor found it impossible to create sufficient interest in the community to do this. The bishop returned after an absence at the Western Conferences, heard the statement of the pastor, and said, "I will help you tomorrow." Early the next morning, as the pastor looked out of his study window, the bishop was seen driving a double team of oxen, drawing a large cart loaded with stones, which with his own hands he gathered from the top of the mountain more than a mile distance. This area is now known as Lord Stirling Stables. He invited the pastor to join him. For 3 days they worked together in this way, carting stone. Meeting Janes on the road, a Christian lawyer exclaimed, quote, "Why, Bishop James, is that you? Drawing stones from your farm?" End quote. The bishop replied, quote, "We don't draw stones for the farm, but we will draw a few for the Lord when needed." End quote. "What does that mean?" inquired a wealthy farmer whose sympathies were not in the least with the church's enterprise. "It means," said the bishop, "that the stones will be drawn, the church has to be built." The bishop's example soon secured an abundant supply of stones. The church was built. At the dedication, the bishop preached one of his most powerful, impressive sermons. In 1896, the Reverend Joseph Apley began a 6-year tenure at the church. A new church was designed, built, and dedicated on August 26, 1900, including an impressive stained glass window, which was noted as a memorial to Bishop Janes. Be it noted that in 1867, the church also had a parsonage on what is the southwest corner of Lewis and Maple Avenue, then called Elm Street. A meeting house stood directly across the street at the second house from the corner of Oak and Finley. A larger annex and education building was dedicated on October 17, 1954, by the Reverend R. Benjamin Garrison. The church celebrated its centennial in June 1953. As early as 1758, a Jesuit priest, Father Ferdinand Steinmeier, Father Farmer, traveled on horseback into Basking Ridge on his way to and from Philadelphia. Stopping at the private homes of Catholics who had settled in the area, he would hear confessions, baptize, celebrate Mass, and perform marriages. His personal journal with sacramental records refers to the area as Basking Ridge. From St. Vincent the Martyr Church in Madison, Seton Hall College, and the Church of the Assumption in Morristown, Catholics had to walk to great distance when the priest was not able to come say Mass in their homes. The first church property, located on South Maple Avenue and Henry Street, was purchased in 1859. It included almost a third of an acre and a 125-year-old carpenter shop, which was renovated into a church to seat 85 people. The Church of St. James was incorporated October 20th, 1864 by the Most Reverend James Roosevelt Bailey, a second cousin of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and also a cousin of the 20th century Saint Mother Elizabeth Bailey Seton. Reverend Lawrence A. Hoey of the Church of the Assumption was listed as pastor. St. James remained a mission of the Church of the Assumption in Morristown until 1873. They shared a pastor, chalice, buckboard wagon, horse and harness with St. Joseph's Church in Mendham. In 1898, the parish became a mission of the newly established Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Bernardsville. Edward Drowse, as its pastor, was assigned two missions, Our Lady of the Mount in the Mount Bethel section of Bourne and Blessed Sacrament in Martinsville. Father Drowse inspired the formation of the Rosary Altar Society, the St. James Players, and the Holy Name Society, and began to raise funds for a new church property. When Father Joseph Wade was appointed as pastor, he found the church and rectory in great need of repair. During his pastorate, land on South Finley Avenue was purchased. A new church and rectory was completed in 1958. The federal design was chosen to conform to the character and history of the town. The original church on South Maple Avenue at Henry Street was demolished as part of the sale agreement. The new church, seating 450, was consecrated on May 4, 1980 by the Most Reverend John C. Rice, Bishop of Trenton. In 1962, Father Wade purchased a second tract of land, including the White Mansion, barn, and carriage house on 15 acres. Men of the parish renovated the rooms in the mansion, and women stocked the kitchen and household items for the Felician sisters who arrived in the school as it opened in 1908. The gymnasium was added in 1990. In 1981, St. James became part of the new Diocese of Metuchen, and Monsignor William J. Cappick was appointed pastor. This was a time of great enthusiasm in the parish. Many new ministries were established for parishioners of all ages. At the same time, Bernards Township experienced a decade of tremendous growth in population. During these years, the number of weekend masses increased to 6, with standing room only at each mass. Monsignor Cappick headed the effort to expand the church. A committee was formed, plans were developed, and ground was broken in September 1998 for the construction of a new worship space costing $7.6 million. The new church, seating 950, was dedicated on December 12, 1999, by Bishop Vincent de Paul Breen. The church, which was built in 1958, is now called The Chapel and is used for daily mass, weddings, funerals, and smaller liturgical services. The chapel is connected to the larger new church by a spacious narthex. Covenant Chapel, Reformed Episcopal Church, located at 127 West Oak Street, Basking Ridge, was established in 1873. Covenant Chapel began as a Bible study in the late 1960s in its current location. Emmanuel Reformed Episcopal Church in Somerville and St. Luke's Reformed Episcopal Church in New Providence worked together to create a work that would complete a triangle of Reformed parishes in northern and central New Jersey. Their parish incorporated in 1968 and purchased a home with a 3-car garage in which the church would meet there. And in 1970, they expanded the home to include their current sanctuary and fellowship hall in 1980. They are thankful for the Lord's provision as they seek to meet the needs of the Basking Ridge community with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Fellowship Deaconery Ministries, located at 3575 Valley Road in Basking Ridge. Fellowship Deaconry Ministries has a rich history that shows the unmistakable hand of God working through His people in America. The Pietism movement arose in the context of the devastation of Germany following the 30 Years' War, 1609 to 1637. Philip Jacob Spener led this movement of individual devotion and piety that emphasized personal transformation through the spiritual renewal and birth. The goal was a religion of the heart and not just of the intellect. In the late 19th century, a mighty pietistic revival swept across Germany. In 1899, Pastor Theophil Kralowitzki had a group of fellow Lutheran pastors met in prayer together, and the leading of the Holy Spirit was evident in this hour of special grace and blessing. This meeting resulted in the pastors founding a new deaconess home in Wandsbek, Prussia, and a new order of deaconesses were established, founded on the principles of Spener's Pietism. By 1929, as the number of deaconesses and deaconess homes in Germany had increased, Sister Amelia Stead and Sister Toni Rodmer responded to the call to come to America. They established a deaconess home in Liberty Corner, New Jersey in 1933. And God's blessing was so upon this new branch of ministry. Young women, saved through God's grace, heard the call to serve the living and true God. The sisters helped to meet the social and spiritual needs of the German immigrants in North America. The sisters found opportunities for private nursing, for distributing German gospel tracts, and for leading neighborhood Bible studies. The Lord used and blessed these humble beginnings to grow a mighty gospel work among the German people in North America. God blessed the tract mission work and outreach of the Fellowship Deaconery so mightily that the hundreds of people were reached with printed word each week, and hundreds more were saved through a personal faith in Christ's atoning work on the cross. These tract missions called for distributions of tracts by deaconesses and tract missionaries, gathering for prayer, Bible study, and Christian fellowship, all on a weekly basis. Sunday school offered biblical instruction for children, and the older youth participated in various organized activities. Evangelistic meetings were held throughout the winter months to win tract readers and friends to Christ. Numerous tract mission stations flourished in New York City, northern New Jersey, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, Chicago, as well as in Canada. By the 1940s, these tract mission stations became known as Evangelical Fellowship Chapels. From the beginning, their deaconess home in Liberty Corner has welcomed young and old from the times of vacation, relaxation, and spiritual renewal. Hundreds of guests took advantage of these opportunities and were blessed as they enjoyed hospitality, the teaching of God's truth, and fellowship with brothers and sisters in the Lord. Camp Sunshine offered a wonderful summer program for children grounded in spiritual instruction and fun-filled activities. For adults, their summer conference weeks led to lives strengthened and refreshed through that peace of heart as believers acted upon the reality of the proclaimed Word of God. Attendance at a conference week has marked the turning point in many a wayward life. What do? The Fellowship Conference Center. They provide retreat facilities and amenities for groups, indoor and outdoor group meeting facilities, and special events throughout the year. Their conference center serves as a special getaway for groups seeking renewal and refreshment throughout the year. Day Camp Sunshine. Their summer day camp serves about 350 children ages 1st grade through 15, combining a traditional recreational camp experience with the life-changing message of God's saving love. They provide campers with an unforgettable summer. Sunshine Preschool. Serving families from across Somerset, Morris, and even Union counties, this special early childhood education and care program offers parents at an affordable opportunity to give their child an academically enriching experience in a family-centered environment. Liberty Corner Mission. Since 1951, Liberty Corner Mission has labored in Taiwan and Japan, preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ and ministering to human need. As an interdenominational faith mission, both foreign and indigenous short-term and career missionaries are recruited, proclaiming forgiveness of sins and eternal salvation through the finished work of Christ on the cross. They make disciples and build his church so that God may be worshiped and glorified. At Somerset Hills Lutheran Church, their mission is to be a servant church, reaching out to share their joy in the good news of salvation in Jesus Christ. The Lord has led them to become involved in a variety of mission projects, spreading the word and helping people in need, both far and near. Dr. Kristen Schmaltz, Compassion Evangelical Hospital. Somerset Hills Lutheran Church members support the work of Dr. Kristen Schmaltz, medical missionary at Compassion Evangelical Hospital in Guinea, West Africa. Whether she is saving a premature infant's life, reading the Bible with on-site construction workers, or brushing up on her Polar, the local language, while visiting with friends, Dr. Kristen is always hard at work in God's kingdom. Jersey Missions. Members of the Somerset Hills Lutheran Church collect and personally distribute hats, gloves, and socks to residents of Plainfield in December. In addition, a scholarship is awarded annually to a graduating Plainfield High School senior and a graduating Bernardsville High School senior. New and gently used coats are collected for those in need in the Morristown area. School supplies are collected to be added to backpacks, which are given to children in need in the Morristown area. They collect new blankets, bath-sized towels, and pillows during the Lent season for homeless veterans. Items are dropped off in the designated boxes at Somerset Hills Lutheran Church to be delivered to the veterans through the VA hospital around Easter. Samaritan's Purse, Operation Christmas Child. At Christmas, Somerset Hills Lutheran Church members of all ages fill shoe boxes with gifts and send them off to the Samaritan's Purse for distribution to children in need around the world. Lutheran Women's Missionary League. The Lutheran Women's Missionary League is the official women's auxiliary of the Lutheran Church, Missouri Synod. For over 65 years, the Lutheran Women's Missionary League has focused on affirming each woman's relationship with Christ, encouraging and equipping women to live out their Christian lives in active mission ministries and to support global missions. The Lutheran World Relief. Lutheran World Relief affirms God's love for all people by working with Lutherans and partners around the world to end poverty, injustice, and human suffering. The Food Bank Network of Somerset County. Somerset Hills Lutheran Church members assist the Food Bank Network of Somerset County fulfill its mission of distributing food and providing other basic human needs to those less fortunate in our community. Somerset Hills Baptist Church, located at 510 Mount Airy Road in Basking Ridge. Their story goes back as far as the mid-60s, at a time when new churches were moving beyond urban centers and popping up in suburbia as so much of the population was moving and growing their families. The Thurston family of Millington had a dream to start a new church in the Bernardsville, Basking Ridge area. Madison Baptist Church came to the rescue to offer their support, and one of their members, Reverend James Strange, an outstanding doctoral student at Drew University, to be the first pastor of this new upstart church. After meeting in homes, a Presbyterian chapel, and even a Masonic lodge, and after a few name changes, the church eventually purchased a piece of property, on Mount Airy Road in Basking Ridge and settled on the name, Somerset Hills Baptist Church. It didn't take long before these pioneer Baptists broke ground and constructed the sanctuary building in 1984 and the education building in 1989. This church has been truly blessed by her pastors, Reverend Strange, Dr. Bennett F. Hall, Dr. John Witt, Dr. Charles Long, and Reverend Ted Harvey. Since about 1980, Somerset Hills Baptist Church has only had 2 pastors. The long tenure of the church's pastors speaks to the godly character and the nature of the congregation. This church has always had a passionate heart for missions and for raising up disciples of Christ. They have seen literally hundreds of people come through their doors, serve the cause of Christ, grow greatly in their faith, and then be sent on to a new mission field. They are a small church with a huge heart. They're not afraid to attempt great things for God. And they love making new friends. So, come worship with them, join a grow group, and serve God with them. You'll be happy you did. Congregation Bnai Israel, established in 1990, is located at 40 White Neck Road in Basking Ridge. Congregation Bnai Israel creates a warm, welcoming, and inclusive community for their congregation and guests. Their congregation comes from communities throughout Somerset and Morris County to participate in their modern, engaging, music-filled services. Their services reach out to all with their spiritualism. While having its original roots in conservative Judaism, the congregation is progressive and welcoming to all, including interfaith families. From early childhood to adult education, there are many ways to grow your Jewish knowledge with them, including Torah study, guest speakers, and our experiential religious school. Their school infuses children with an understanding of Jewish ethics, history, traditions, and prayer, while engaging them in meaningful social action. Or join them for their fun monthly young family programs, allowing parents and children to socialize while connecting with Jewish holidays and traditions. B'nai Mitzvah preparations begin in their school with Hebrew reading and prayer, and culminates with individualized work on Torah. Congregation B'nai Israel is focused on Tikkun Olam, healing the Word. By actively engaging in their local and global community, they strive to help solve the problems that face them through tzedakah, social action, and acts of loving kindness. They are a social and caring community with congregants who have diverse family backgrounds and structures. At B'nai Israel, they strive to build and maintain a Jewish community where you always have a family and a home. Please come and visit them and see what they are all about. Chabad Jewish Center at Basking Ridge, located at 3048 Valley Road in Basking Ridge. The Chabad Center is guided by the idea that there should be a place where everyone can feel at home within a Jewish context. There should be a center for Jewish discovery where open-minded exploration is the key, not background or affiliation. Theirs is a place where Judaism is celebrated joyfully and meaningfully, where Judaism sheds relevant perspective to their daily lives, with opportunities to expand the mind, excite the heart, and touch the soul. Their center offers a wide range of learning venues for all ages where questions are encouraged and embraced. Located in Basking Ridge with satellites in Clinton, Fanwood, and Hillsborough, Their center is premised on the idea that every individual has an indispensable contribution to make to the totality of the human experience. The core values. The organizational mindset of the Chabad Center is permeated by core values. These values find expression in all of their programs and activities. They are not a list of disconnected ideas, but a holistic unit that forms their attitude towards life. Relationships. Life is enriched by the relationships you form. At Chabad, they deeply value a sense of context. They seek genuine relationships with each other, with the environment, and with the divine. Exploration. A constant openness to questioning allows them to discover new frontiers. It is a necessary tool in the unfolding of their own potential. At Chabad, they respect this power of exploration and celebrate its processes. Time. Time is not just a passive backdrop to your life. Rather, it comprises moments, periods, and holidays, each with its own distinct message, guiding us all to various aspects in our journey of self-growth. At Chabad, their openness to the lessons of these moments allows them to access the power of time. Space. Space is more than just the natural context of their lives. It has such a profound effect on how you feel and the way you operate. At Chabad, they are conscious of the power of space, respecting its designations. Responsibility. Their human instinct is to focus on what they want or need from others. Responsibility is a mindset which reverses the flow, emphasizing their mandate to respond to each other's needs. It is not what they want out of life, but what life wants out of them. At Chabad, they see responsibility as a beautiful thing, not as a burden. Joy. Living right is an intense experience, but they will never lose the lightnesses of being, the feeling of boundless joy. At Chabad, they focus on the joy of simply being in the moment and celebrate who they are within a shimmering world. History. The story of the Chabad Center does not begin in Basking Ridge. It began almost 300 years ago in the Carpathian Mountains in Poland with the birth of Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidism. The Jewish community has been decimated by programs throughout Eastern Europe. Entire villages were wiped out and the remaining Jews plunged into despair. To make matters worse, the Jewish masses didn't even have their faith to sustain them. At the end of the 17th century, Torah scholarship was restricted to an elite class who regarded the masses as illiterate, second-rate Jews. The Baal Shem Tov, as he was known, introduced a perspective known as Chassidism that made spirituality and Judaism accessible and meaningful to the entire spectrum of the Jewish community. Chassidism breathed life into the beaten Jewish psyche. One of the greatest of the early Chassidic leaders was Rabbi Zalman. He founded the Chabad Lubavitch stream of the Chassidic movement. Chabad is an acronym of 3 Hebrew words: Chagma, wisdom; Bnai, understanding; and Dat, knowledge. Lubavitch, the town in which it was based, actually means brotherly love, which is emblematic of the love and dedication that characterizes Chabad Lubavitch and its representatives. In the early 1940s, the devastation of the Holocaust brought Chabad Lubavitch to reestablish itself in the United States. Led by Rabbi Mendel Shirnison, known as the Rebbe, spiritual master, who was motivated by a profound love for humanity and spurred by boundless optimism, Chabad launched an unprecedented range of Jewish institutions, outreach programs, and social services. Today, more than 2,800 Chabad Lubavitch institutions span over 40 countries on 6 continents. Their educational and social services institutions serve all Jews and many non-Jews, regardless of affiliation or background. In the United States alone, more than 700 centers serve communities in every state in the Union. Here, in New Jersey, the Chabad outreach phenomenon began as an outgrowth of the Rabbinical College of America. The first Chabad institution in New Jersey grew into today's 41 Chabad centers throughout our state. In 1991, newlyweds Rabbi Mendy and Malki Herson completed their future. In Chabad, the relevant question facing a young couple is not whether they should devote their lives to Jewish continuity and education, but rather, where should they settle to work for this ideal? Chabad recognized that Jews were moving west and that there was a growing need for Jewish infrastructure in the Somerset and Hunterdon County areas. So, the Hershons moved to Basking Ridge. They used their condominium headquarters to strengthen Jewish identity in the area, with holiday programming and classes for adults and children. As their programming expanded, they added more people to their team, heightening the effectiveness and scope of their programming, schools, and synagogue. In 1994, they purchased their Chabad Center property, 3048 Valley Road, eventually purchasing the two adjacent properties, totaling 7.5 acres. In 2003, they completed the first phase of their building, comprising classrooms and offices. The second phase included their sanctuary, social hall, and more classrooms. They have 3 satellite centers. In 2001, Rabbi Avram and Malki Belshevik joined them as the directors of the Chabad in Union County. In 2002, Rabbi Shmaya and Miriam Krishnik joined as directors of the Chabad of Greater Hillsborough. In 2003, Rabbi Eli and Rochelle Kornfeld joined as directors of Chabad of Hunterdon County. As they say, let's continue to build our community together. King of Kings, located at 219 Mount Airy Road in Basking Ridge. Pastors Peter and Tricia Roselle founded King of Kings in 1999 when they started a Tuesday night Bible study at the Basking Ridge Firehouse. They had served together in a local church ministry since before their marriage in 1985 and accepted the call to birth a new church in a place neither had previously visited, the small town of Bernardsville. One weekend, on their way back from Pennsylvania to their home in Essex County, they decided to ride through Bernardsville to take a look. Pastor Tricia was asking the Lord for a sign as they stopped on Route 202 for gas. As she was praying, she looked across the street from the gas station and saw the Roselle Savings Bank on Church Street, one of the many confirmations she had received over the years. After 10 months of Tuesday night meetings, the Bible study grew large enough to launch out and begin meeting on Sunday mornings in the cafeteria at Bernards High School in Bernardsville. Pastor Pete likes to joke that he had one band member, a drummer named Roland, to accompany him on the worship team. The problem was that Roland was an electronic drum machine made by a company called Roland. The church grew steadily as God blessed the work through answered prayers and changed lives. The church rented office space on Claremont Avenue and also used a blue house on Minebrook Road for ministry sessions. Soon, as needs were recognized in people's lives, they were told they needed a blue house appointment for prayer ministry. Good thing the owner didn't paint it a different color. Pastor Peter's marketplace focus led him to join the Bernardsville Chamber of Commerce and to serve the community as one of the officers of the chamber. As time went on, he had the vision to start a cafe across from the train station and use a franchise called Port City Java. The store served the best coffee in town and combined a bookstore and recording studio under one room. It was a hub of activity from morning to night, 6 days a week. It became a great expression of God's love in the community by reaching people who would not set foot in church. In 2009, the church began meeting at the current location at 219 Mount Airy Road and had to close the cafe in order to focus on all the resources on the new facility. It is not unusual for people in Bernardsville to still mention the store in passing because of the wonderful atmosphere they entered. The church has been privileged to host over 100 conferences and guest speakers over the years, with a strong emphasis on training and equipping the saints to do the work of the ministry. The Islamic Society of Basking Ridge is currently under construction and located at Church Street in the Liberty Corner section of Basking Ridge. The Islamic Society of Basking Ridge is dedicated to providing Islamic religious, educational, cultural, and social service to Muslims living or working in the Somerset Hills and the surrounding areas, providing these services in an open, diverse, inclusive, and moderate environment, consistent with the Quran and Sunnah, and promoting interfaith and interfaith dialogue in order to improve relationships between Muslims and people of other faiths. The Islamic Society of Basking Ridge also offers the ISBR Academy. They are a weekend Islamic school, and their mission is to provide Islamic education in a positive and welcoming environment. They offer 3 main subjects in their curriculum, levels 1 to 8, for ages 5 to 17.